Hello and welcome. I have the great pleasure to have with me today Inaki Amate, who is Head of Digital and Design at EY. Welcome, Inaki.
Thank you very much for having me.
What do you do at EY as the Head of Digital and Design?
Yeah, so I'm basically helping to lead, build our design capability across Asia Pacific, and then leading the digital team also here in Greater China. Helping to build a number of innovation labs that we have here in the region. So, and then I'm sitting most of the time here in Hong Kong with our Wave Space Innovation Lab in Wenchuhan.
Fantastic. So today we're here at the Great Room and just had a fantastic panel about startup and corporate co-innovation. Give us an example. Why should startups and corporates co-innovate?
I think organizations like big corporations, they definitely need to look into how they are not going to be disrupted in the future, right? And the disruption is no longer just coming from your traditional competitors, but it's actually coming many times from the side and you don't necessarily see it. So startups are starting to erode market by bringing better solutions, more simplified solutions that address better the needs of the customers. And if organizations that have been established for a long time don't really look at how these startups are actually entering their market, they are going to be disrupted. And a good way to look at how these startups are helping to take over market is to spend time with them. So look at the ways they operate, the kind of culture that they have that allows them to be so fast, agile, and nimble to adapt to the circumstances and look into what are the specific needs that are required today.
Right. And at the same time, I think startups also realize that there's a benefit in collaborating with more established structures, larger structures. Can you share some success cases?
Yeah, so I think that some of the best examples that I've seen are organizations that like us that have been actually acquiring smaller startups for helping them to get access to a much bigger market that otherwise it would be difficult for them. So in our case, we've been acquiring over the last couple of years a number of organizations here in Asia Pacific. Most recently, we acquired a company called Mtel here in Hong Kong, and the value proposition for them is that they are going to get a fantastic access to a number of clients and at the level of seniority in the leadership of those organizations that will help them to get projects that otherwise it would be very different to get for them all by themselves. The other way that is adding value to these organizations to work with large corporations is to accelerate their overall ambition and objectives by giving them an injection of resources that otherwise it would be very difficult for them to get over a short period of time. So there is obviously benefits, but there are obviously challenges that they also need to take into consideration. I think to some of the examples we have seen, the most successful ones are the ones where when a big organization collaborates with a startup, you give them enough space to accommodate for that transition into being part of the organization. If you disrupt too fast the way that the startup has been operating, you run the risk of losing the value of that original integration. Yeah.
If you channel too much, right?
That's
I was
right.
going to say for our audience, be it startups or corporate decision makers, what are some pitfalls to avoid or the best advice that you can give?
Yeah. So, many times some of the challenges come from trying to impose the large organizations back systems, platforms too early into the startups. The startups are used to work in a very agile way many times because they don't necessarily need to follow like strict requirements. If you impose too fast and too soon like complex and tedious operational systems underneath, you might actually start like slowing down the whole thing, right? So that's one. Another one would be around making sure that you retain the culture of the organization, and that many times it's just down to simple things like allowing them to remain in the space that they've been working, that probably has a level of creativity that the large organization doesn't have, allowing them for being themselves, dressing code, stuff like that.
Right.
They sound really silly, but they actually matter a lot. So the soft side is as important as the hard side.
Yeah. We talked about that actually,
Yes.
absolutely. And I think it's very important to keep in mind that let the startup be problem focused, don't make it too solution focused. Wonderful. I think we can have the full insights of the panel discussion we had in our podcast. I'll invite you to have a look at it. And so Inaki, thank you so much
Thank you
for
much
being
having
with
me.
us.
Yeah.
It was great. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thanks a lot.